Good evening. My name is John H. and I am an alcoholic. Welcome to the Code Blue Big Book Action Seminar. What we're going to do in this seminar, guys, is we're going to go through the first 164 pages of our big book, our Guide to Freedom, and we're going to do exactly what it says. I myself am no big book guru. I am no spiritual wonder man. I'm just a simple drunk who was almost dead from the disease when a couple recovered alcoholics took me through the book. I did the work, and it saved my life. Now, as a result of that, I try to pass on what has been so freely given to me. Now, I borrow heavily from the Joe and Charlie Big Book Weekend tapes. I borrow heavily from that smartass Clancy. I borrow from Chuck C. I borrow from all of the giants who have gone before me. So please, get yourself a big book, large print I prefer, a highlighter and a pen, and bring your willingness. Get ready to change your life. Thanks for listening. Good evening, everybody. I'm John. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, John.
All right. I'm going to dispense with the Max C tonight since we got such a small group. Is something going on tonight, or?
I don't know.
Is everybody?
I wasn't invited.
Yeah, me neither, man.
Yeah.
It's like the story of my life. So I guess we'll open with the set-aside prayer. God, please let me set aside everything I think I know about sobriety, life, and you, so that I may be open to a new experience. Peace.
Peace.
All right, guys. Welcome, everybody. Again, I want to say that if you guys have not gotten your fourth step done, or your fifth step, rather, please get that done. That is the key that opens up the door to the rest of the steps for us. The first, I always like, when I do step 10, I always think about when I got out of detox a little over 6 years ago, maybe 6.5 years ago. And I started by going to the gym every morning, working all day. I got my job back, and I'd hit a meeting every night. And I did that 7 days a week for 6 months. And I was driving people to meetings. I was taking the job as a trusted servant. I was setting up chairs. I joined 2 AA clubs. I was doing all this stuff. And at the end of those 6 months, I was dying inside, and I was thinking about drinking. I was thinking about suicide at 6 months sober. I was restless, irritable, discontented. When I signed up for Code Blue, for the first time in my life, because I'd come in and out of AA for 20 years, for the first time in my life, after about 3 months of going through the book and doing the work that these guys told me to do, my obsession to drink was lifted. I mean, that had never happened to me before, but even better than that, my resentment and my anger and my fears started to go away. And by the time I got to step 9 and did a couple of amends, I was feeling unbelievable, just fantastic. And many of those promises that we read about were actually coming true, the ones that I used to get angry about, that I heard at meetings for years, and I said I don't believe them. So the question is, how can I stay this way, and how can I continue to grow, right? Because if I'm not going forward, I'm going backwards. So how can I quiet the disturbance, right, caused by everyday life? And many times everyday life drives me up a wall. And a lot of times I'm in pain, and a lot of times I want to escape the pain, because that's what I did my whole life. So what are some ways that I would escape pain? Well, watch television, right? Shop, work out, read a book, sleep, right? Sometimes even go to meetings so I wouldn't have to think about stuff. But that's good. But call another human being, pray, practice 10 and 11. Sometimes I discovered that it's good for me just to sit and feel that pain because it's there, and I need to know what it's about, right? So I don't want to necessarily run away from it like I always did. I need help on a daily basis, even after working all of these steps. Because as somebody told me, they said, John, you're very immature. And I said, really? They said, yeah, you are. They said, number 1, you're impatient. I go, yeah, I am. Number 2, you want to play God. And number 3, you cannot handle frustration. And those are 3 signs that you're immature. And the ways that I play God is when I get angry. I get angry at people, right? Because I know better. And my judgment is better. So I get angry when things aren't going my way. When I resent people, I resent other people, I have tried them and found them guilty in my head. Again, my judgment, right? Sometimes I try to play God by lying or by twisting the truth. So I try to force my will on the outcome of things by cheating, right? Rather than by being truthful. So I really need a set of spiritual exercises that I can use on a daily basis to try to stay in fit spiritual condition, right? And one important thing is to remember Rule 63. Everybody, Rule 63. Don't take yourself so seriously. That one I love. I don't know where that's from, but I hear it all the time. It might be in our literature somewhere. And I really like to laugh at myself nowadays, because sometimes when I look at myself, I can see that I'm being ridiculously pompous, judgmental, immature, and way too serious. The other reason, and steps 10 and 11 are a set of spiritual exercises that we get to work on a daily basis. And one thing I've discovered, since I've woken up spiritually, is that spiritual lapses, right, always precede chemical lapses. So we stop doing these spiritual exercises, and then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, we're doing drugs or we're drinking. So spiritual lapses always precede chemical lapses. Now, we have not studied the traditions in Code Blue, right? We just kind of going through the steps. But whenever I get to step 10, I really take a quick peek at tradition 10. So, Davey, can you read to tradition 10? Can you see that up there? Tradition 10.
Tradition 10 is Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues. Hence, the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy.
Yep, so we have no on outside issues, so we're not drawn into controversy. And if I don't live by the steps, I might drink and I might die. But if Alcoholics Anonymous as a whole do not live by the traditions, we all might fail, and then we all might drink, and we all might die. So I got to ask myself, what's more important, the steps or the traditions? I can't answer that. I don't know. So tradition 10, right? We stick to one thing that we know. In the mid-1840s, around Washington, D.C., there was a group called the Washingtonians. And what the Washingtonians did, it was one alcoholic helping another alcoholic to achieve sobriety. And this was only the second time in human history that there have been large amounts of recoveries from hopeless alcoholics. They got to about 150,000 members. Unbelievable. Bill Wilson had never heard about them, right? So they're doing pretty good. And remember, there's no internet, there's no phones, right? One alkie helping another. Well, they got quite successful, and about that time there was a divisive election, just like the one we went through. They got involved in politics. They said, we do this getting sober stuff so well, let's get involved in politics. Let's try to stop the selling of booze, and let's get involved in religion. So they got involved in all of these outside things. And 1 year after they did that, the Washingtonians as a group disappeared, and most all of them died drunk. Most all of them died drunk, right? So Bill's got a little pamphlet here, but that's one of the reasons Bill made the traditions, because sometime in the early 1940s, a group started to fail all over the country, and Bill didn't know what's going on, and somebody told him about the Washingtonians, and he studied up on it and said, oh my God. And that's why he wrote these traditions, to try to keep us together. So I'm going to read a little something out of a pamphlet, Problems Other Than Alcohol. Sobriety, freedom from alcohol, through the teaching and practice of the 12 steps, is the sole purpose of an AA group. Groups have repeatedly tried other activities and they have always failed, right? So he's saying, hey man, we're going to stick to the teaching and the practice of the 12 steps. That's it. Carry the message. Nothing else. If we don't do that, we're going to be in deep trouble. So when I went through the work, steps 1, 2, and 3 got me in harmony with God. 4, 5, 6, and 7 got me. That gets us in harmony with ourselves. Steps 8 and 9 get us back in harmony with the world around us, right? So again, we are put back together, not as we used to be before alcohol almost destroyed us, but I believe as God intended us to be, right? So it says we have entered the world of the Spirit, and they talk about a design of living. So, how can we keep this going, right? How can we continue to grow? Because if I ever think that I'm finished, right? If I think, oh, I'm done, I'm going to get bored and I'm going to stop coming. If I stop coming and I stop helping others and I stop praying and I stop meditating, guess what happens, man? I drink and I die. I tell everybody this is a deadly disease. Every doggone time we've met on Tuesday, somebody in the paper has died. Yesterday, a fella got drunk, blackout drunk, drove the wrong way, and he ran headfirst into an 18-year-old boy and a 19-year-old girl. They both died, and they were belted. Of course, the drunk guy lived. Right? If we don't kill ourselves, we're killing everybody. So, you got to remember that this is a deadly, deadly disease. All right, let's go. We got just a little bit in the book today. Let's see here. I should have marked it. We are on page 84. Page 84 in about the middle of the page. Okay. And by the way, when we get through step 9 or halfway through step 9, things are going really good. We usually got a new job, we got a new TV, we got new clothes, maybe new carpet. We got our key to the house works. We're back in the bedroom. We're saying, hey man, I better work a few extra hours so that I can pay for all of this stuff. Right? And pretty soon we become too busy to go to AA. And I got to tell you, man, if we're too busy to go to AA, we are just plain old too freaking busy. Right? We're too busy if that's the case. And we see people 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20, that they stop coming, they stop doing these things. And then the next thing you know, if they're lucky, if they're unlucky, they disappear. We never see them again. But if they're lucky, they come straggling back in, and they get to start over. So that's why we keep these steps 10, 11, and 12, so we continue to maintain, but also to grow. This thought brings us to step 10, which suggests, highlight the next 3 lines, we continue to take personal inventory and continue to set right any new mistakes as we go along. We vigorously commenced this way of living as we cleaned up the past. So next to that, off to the left, let's write remain teachable. Remain teachable. Hey, all right, Andrew. We are on page 84. 84. So that's remaining teachable, right? Continue to take personal inventory. And I know people that have done a half-assed job of going through the steps, right, 4 through 9, and not getting any promises, but all of a sudden they start doing 10 and 11. And we're going to see that steps 10 and 11 are a reworking of steps 4 through 9. And these people that start to do that and they get results, a lot of them will go back and they'll rework these steps again, only they'll do it like the book says, right? And they'll get that awakening. We have entered the world of the Spirit, right? That means that we've woken up spiritually. Our next function is to grow, not to maintain, but to grow in understanding and in effectiveness. We're going to highlight to the end of the paragraph. Okay, I'm going to let you guys highlight because we're going to be writing some things down. So this is not an overnight matter. It should continue for our lifetime. Okay, so next to that first sentence, we're going to write step 10 instructions. And they're going to give them to us. So we're going to get some step 10 instructions here. And these things really saved my life because, man, you know, again, I'm a commissioned salesman working in a Shark Tank, and if I follow these instructions, I'm okay. If I don't, I go off the deep end. It should continue for a lifetime. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. Okay, above that, write 4. That's step 4. When, circle that word when. Okay, and next to it, write not if. So, hallelujah, man, we're human. So it says, when these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. Okay, above, ask God at once to remove them, write 6 and 7. Steps 6 and 7. So our first instruction is to watch for these things. Our second instruction is to ask God to remove them. We discuss them with someone immediately. Above that, write 5. That's step 5. And make amends quickly if we've harmed anyone. Above that, write steps 8 and 9. Then we resolutely turn our thoughts to someone we can help. Above that, write step 12. Step 12. Love and tolerance of others is our code. So I was told that that's where Code Blue came from. That's where they got the name. Code Blue. Right? We come in here, they wheel us in on a gurney, we're dying, and then we walk out, and all of a sudden love and tolerance of others is our code. What a change.
Where are we?
We're on page 84 near the bottom of the page. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. We're highlight to the end of the page. There's this. I mean, we only got a few pages today. This is so important stuff. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time sanity will have returned. Okay. So next to that sentence, let's write. We're going to write 2 things. We're going to write miracle, because that's a miracle, man. We used to fight everybody and everything, and we were completely freaking insane. So we get our sanity back on page 84. Right? Remember those, back on page 45, the anti-promises. So that's a miracle, and that's also a 10-step promise. So write 10-step promise near the bottom of the page. There was, and maybe I mentioned this before, there was, and I don't even know who did it, but there was some psychiatrist, and he was in charge of a mental institution. And he would ask the inmates, or whatever you want to call them. He said, "Would you rather be right or would you rather be free?" And the vast majority of these crazy people that were locked up said, "Man, no, I want to be right." And I mean that's my whole life. I wanted to be right rather than to be free, right? And somebody said, "John, you're not going to get drunk from making mistakes. You're going to get drunk by defending them," right? So I'd rather be free today. For by this time sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. So those are all some 10-step promises, man. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it. Neither are we avoiding temptation. Highlight the next 2.5 lines, the next sentence. We feel as though he had been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is our experience. Highlight that last sentence. That is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. So, off to the left, let's write, how do I know if I am not spiritually fit? Or somewhere in there. How do I know if I am not spiritually fit? And those promises at the bottom of page 84 are sometimes, called the second promises, right? Because we're working steps 4 through 9 on a daily basis. In addition to the promises that we get after our 5th step. So the promises are all over this book. So, how do we know? Well, I'll tell you how I know. And it's not, sometimes I'm not feeling very good, but what am I doing, man? Am I still doing my prayers and meditation? Am I still trying to help other people? And am I still trying to bring something to the table? Am I trying to work with new guys? It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to feel great inside all the time, but it's what am I doing? Because this is a program of action, and I can tell you that when I have burning resentment and judgment chickling around in my chest, that tight feeling of anxiety, then I know something is wrong, man. I know that something's wrong. If I'm having to tell little white lies to keep myself from getting into an even tighter spot than I'm already in, I know something's not right. So that's that. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear, and they are going to crop up. Thank God. It allows me to be human, right? It says when, not if. So we're not going to be wonderful spiritual gurus all the time. That just isn't it. It is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. Circle that word laurels and draw a little arrow over to the left. We're going to write things I've done, accomplishments I've achieved. Past tense. I guess it should be good things I've done, accomplishments I've achieved, past tense. So those are laurels, right? The Roman emperor, when they got back from the campaign, they used to give them those laurels. Good things I've done, accomplishments I've achieved, past tense. Okay? It is easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. Circle subtle foe and draw a little arrow up to the margin right there. And subtle means sly, clever, devious, difficult to detect. Alcohol is sly, clever, devious, difficult to detect, and foe means personal enemy. So they're telling us that alcohol is very hard to spot, it's devious, it's clever, and it wants to kill us. It wants to kill us. It wants to make us miserable. It's our personal enemy. Underline the next 3 lines. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Okay? So next to that one, let's write postponement of death sentence. Postponement of death sentence. And I mean, this really is a deadly disease. It really is. It's killing people right and left. And most of us don't even make it into the rooms. And the ones that make it into the rooms and don't do the work and have untreated alcoholism, they're dying too. The first time this was explained to me, I had a little picture in my head of a red phone ringing, right? And it was the governor was on the phone, and he said, "Let's give John another day of life," right? Because it really is a postponement of a death sentence. Every day is a day when we must, circle must, carry the vision of God's will into all, underline all, of our activities. I mean, that's a tall order, right? But we can try. Underline these prayers right here. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. Next to that, we're going to write 10th step prayer. 10th step prayer. And again, if I'm going too fast and you miss anything, you get on Code Blue Big Book on YouTube and listen to session 2 or 3. Or 1. You can see how I've changed over the few years I've been doing this. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower, underline our willpower, along this line, all we wish. It is the proper use of the will. Okay, so remember how earlier in the book it said our willpower will not keep us sober. Our willpower, it will avail us absolutely nothing. Well, we've done this work. We're practicing these spiritual exercises, and hopefully what we've done is we've aligned our free will with God's will, right? And so now we've got our willpower back, and hopefully we're going to be using it in a proper way rather than the way we used to try to use it. Much has already been said about receiving strength, inspiration, and direction from Him who has all knowledge and power. If we have carefully followed directions, underline followed directions, and next to it write not suggestions. Right? Remember the story about the non-alcoholic psychiatrist who had Bill jerk out the musts and everything in how it works and directions and put suggestions in there. He put it right back in. So follow directions, not suggestions. We have begun to sense the flow of His Spirit into us. To some extent, we have become God conscious. We have begun to develop this vital sixth sense. Bill talks about a sixth sense just a couple of times. Underline that last sentence, but we must go further, and that means more action. More action. So our book tells us that in deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God, right? And here it's telling us that the book tells us that God has all power and all direction. So they're telling us that power is available to us. If we can just tap into it, right? If we can learn how to tap into it by following these spiritual exercises. I'm going to read just a couple of notes here, and we'll go on to step 11. So again, in step 3, turn our will and our life over, which is our thoughts and our actions, right? Let God direct them. Step 4, it says a business which takes no inventory usually goes broke, right? We don't do the work. For us, going broke is going back to drinking. In living sober, we cannot afford to hold on to useless, harmful attitudes and practices, especially these useless and harmful practices are killing us. So what we can do is we can cut our losses and reduce the pain and harm we are causing ourselves and others. So step 10 is a daily revisiting of steps 4 through 9, right? We are now living by a code. When I was out there running and gunning and drinking, sleeping with anything in it that would have me, I lived without a code. My life had no meaning, right? So it tells us again, we've got to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. And when they crop up, we got to do something about them. So where do these things crop up? Well, they crop up in our thoughts and our motives, and more importantly, they crop up in our words. And they crop up in our actions, right? But even in our thoughts, and I'm going to tell you a little story about where this. I almost went insane with just my thoughts without even doing anything. So it is easier to deal with thoughts and feelings before they are expressed. So we learn to keep our mouth shut, right? One of the things, if we're going crazy, we keep our mouth shut. If we let others make us angry, right, we give other people control of our lives, right? My anger, I discovered through doing this work, it comes from my own fear, my own anxiety, my insecurity, and the perceived threats to my social standing, my security, and my sex life, right? So when I do make mistakes, and I got to tell you guys, I still make a lot of mistakes, right? I'm a hothead. I must immediately correct them by making amends, right? And even if somebody was nasty to me, right? I've got to, when I'm starting to feel these things, I don't want to let them start to control me. I have to do this because I want to stay sober and I want to improve myself, man. Some things that, if I do blow up and I go to make amends to somebody, like say the warehouse guy shipped out the wrong tile and I just took an earful from the guy in Ely, right? And I blow up at him, I just go back there and I should say, well, I was wrong to do that, right? But sometimes I want to do the partial apology. I should not have done that, but you stupid son of a bitch, your actions prior to this caused me to explode. So I'm sorry. Well, no, man, no, that's a partial apology. I was wrong to have done that, right? The mistake was made. Let's fix it, right? So I got to push my pride aside, right? Because I want to strengthen my sobriety, but I want to strengthen my character as well. If somebody hurts me, right? Many times I get vindictive, I get indignant, and I get angry, right? I'm experiencing what the book calls spiritual dis-ease, right? In the 12 and 12, Bill says if someone hurts us and we are sore, we are in the wrong also, right? Remember, we're reliving these resentments, we're hurting ourselves, and we're also hurting the people around us by reliving them. If I hang on to a resentment, I cause harm to myself and to others. I want peace, man. So the sooner I let go, the sooner I regain some serenity, right, and some self-control, man. And that's a tricky thing. That's a tricky thing because I've been a hothead my whole life.
Not you, John.
Yeah, no, not me. It's, if you'd have only known me. I told you the story about, the 6'6" guy that I found out that I terrified him. Little old me. Once when we practice step 10, we should discuss it with somebody right away and maybe look at the incident with our sponsor, right? And that's how we grow. The benefits we get by doing this, right, is the first one, which is wonderful, is we get to dissolve misunderstandings quickly. We can dissolve misunderstandings. Otherwise, they fester and they grow, man. So if we do this, we get to dissolve misunderstandings. We get rid of the fear that people will discover what we have done. That's a lot of stress when we've done something, maybe even a mistake that was an honest mistake and we're hiding it. That's a hell of a lot of stress, right? So we come clean. We get freedom from guilt and shame. Guilt and shame drove me back to that bottle, I can't tell you how much, and we're more able to help other people, right? And we're going to see as we read step 11 that morbid reflection is no good, right? Morbid reflection is when we make a mistake and we beat the hell out of ourselves about that mistake, right? Once we've made our amends and we've tried to fix it, we got to let it go rather than keep reliving it and saying I'm the worst guy on earth, right? Because then we cannot be of good service to God and to other people. So we want to grow spiritually, man. If I don't go forward, I am going backward. That's why nothing in this universe stays the same, man. And I think I wrote on there, if we start coasting, you can only coast downhill. You cannot coast uphill. So we got to watch out. I got some of those 10 things. Few quotes. Thomas Jefferson, I think I've got this a couple of times. Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. That means we've got to inventory ourselves, right? And step 10, we don't do that at night. That's our walking around during the day kind of step, right? Step 10 is a walking around in our pocket step. As a fellowship, we took the steps out of the book. We put them on cards. We put them on the wall. But we left the instructions on how to work these steps in the book. So, step 10 on the wall, right? If we, basically, if we can you read step 10, somebody up there? Andrew, can you see that?
Continue to take personal inventory and when we were wrong, promptly admit it.
Continue to take personal inventory and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. So that means, oh my gosh, if I made a mistake, I had better fix it. I'd better apologize to somebody, right? Well, that's not what it says, man. Let me see. Where is my? If we continue to work steps 4 through 9 every day of our life, there's no way we can do this and stay the same. There's no way we can do it and not grow. We are going to grow tremendously. Now, these sheets that you guys got for step 4, right? I've got one of those sheets in my head, right? These sheets that we did when we did step 4. And if I get screwed up at 8 o'clock in the morning and I wait 8 a.m., I get into a big row with a warehouse guy or maybe a customer, and I wait till that night to fix it. An hour later, I'm going to be even worse off. I'm going to be getting into it with somebody else, and I'm going to have that tight feeling in my chest, anxiety, fear, all frickin' day long. So I want to take care of it right away to get rid of it. Because if I don't, I have wasted another day in anger, worry, depression, etc. And I don't want to do that. So if I get into it with somebody and I'm feeling something, I go over and in the corner and I say, okay, John, who are you mad at? That's column 1. Who am I mad at? Okay, John, what did they do to you? What's the cause? That's column 2. Okay, John, what part of self is affected? Well, with me, as I discovered when I did this work, it's usually my self-esteem or my money. That's where I'm at, man. I discovered that when I did steps 4 and 5. So then, what did they do to you? What part of self is affected? What, if anything, did I do to get this situation going? And then I look in column 4, which character defect of mine set this fear or anger into motion? Right? Because I cannot get upset unless my character defects, my dishonesty, my selfishness, self-centered fear, or inconsideration of others is activated, right? That's how I get pissed off, man. And I can usually spot it right away. So we go over to the corner and we say, okay, God, I don't want to be this way. One of my things I like to say is, God, I'm spiritually unfit right now. Please help me. I don't want to feel this way, man. Please take it away. This selfish, self-seeking fear. If possible, I try to discuss it with somebody immediately, right? You can't always call your sponsor, but, when you can, maybe at lunch you do it. You give them example, you find out what's going on, you chat with somebody, you make amends quickly if I've hurt anybody, and 10 to 15 minutes later, the doggone thing is gone and the rest of the day is okay, right? Because again, I've wasted all the time I want to waste in resentment, fear, anger, worry, depression. I don't have to do that anymore, and I like feeling good, man. I really like feeling good. So I love this story. If we do this, by the way, we're going to continue to learn more and more about ourselves, about God, and about other people, and this is a new dimension of living, right? And I mean, we continue, because again, if we didn't have the opportunity to grow, we're going to get bored. We're going to stop coming, and we're going to think about the ease and comfort of a drink. So we are never done, man. This thing just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And if I stay fearful and angry and resentful and dishonest and selfish and depressed, it's got to be because I want to be that way, and I cannot blame anybody else, man. I love this story, and I tell it every time. Eric's involved in it. I was in this small group. This was a few years ago, and there were like 8 of us in the small group, and 3 of them were chronic relapsers. These guys, I was worried about these guys getting through that day without drinking, and so I went first. And I talked about how I made no progress by just going to meetings alone, and I was never able to get free from alcohol and my anger and my fear until I went through the book and did the work. And I talked about how Bill Wilson himself, had done these steps, and they wrote them down in the book, the first 100, right? And I got done speaking. And I talked about how they saved my life. So there's this old duffer sitting right next to me, right? There's an old duffer, right? It's always the old duffer, right? So he's sitting right next to me, and he goes, I'm going to be the devil's advocate. I'm not exaggerating. So anyways, the guy reaches in, and he pulls out of his pocket, he pulls a shiny, it was outrageous. It was like a 50-year coin or something. And he goes, I only worked one step in my life, and that was the first step. And I never had to do any of these other steps, and neither do you. And by the way, Bill Wilson the book wasn't written, so how could he have worked the steps, right? And so, he's saying, so what do you think? The guy directly contradicts, so I'm getting pissed, man. I am getting pissed, man. And, it went around the group. And I didn't hear anything after that guy, and I'm just getting angrier and angrier, and I'm like, this son of a bitch is gonna kill these guys. I'm gonna throw them up against the wall, right? And some other people gently talked about working the steps too, and I looked up at the wall and I saw tradition 3, right? The only requirement is the desire to stop drinking, and I said, oh, doggone it, this guy just happened to glance up. And that's what I saw. I said, well, this guy, has every right to be here just the same as me, right? So the meeting was over. I didn't say a word to this guy, nothing. I didn't say anything to him. I grabbed one of the guys and I said, look, man, if you want to get better, this is what I did, and I hope you're going to do it. The other couple of chronic relapsers disappeared, and I left, and I went home, and I was getting more angry by the minute, right? And of course, Eric was staying with me at the time, and I said, God, and I didn't, and I just said, well, there's this guy in small group, and he directly contradicted me. He's killing all these people in AA, and then I told him about it, and then I said, God, please take it away, right? And and about 2 hours after that, I was even angrier, and the tension in my chest, and I was just so freaking pissed, right? And I said, well, obviously something's wrong here. So I grabbed one of these sheets, and I said, who am I resentful at? Well, I'm resentful at that old duffer. Well, what's the cause? Well, the cause is, he said don't work this. No, that's not the cause. The cause was he directly contradicted everything I said. Okay, well, what part of myself is affected? Oh my God, it's my self-esteem. This son of a bitch, it was my self-esteem. And once oh my God, that's why I'm so angry. It's not because he's killing it's because the guy directly contradicted me. So my self-esteem took a hit in front of these other people, right? Okay, all of a sudden I realized what the real deal is, right? And my ambitions, my social esteem for the future with those people that I'll see at other meetings, right? And oh my God, and I said, well, what is the exact nature of my wrongs, faults, mistakes, defects, or shortcomings? Well, was I selfish? Was I dishonest? Was I self-seeking? Well, yeah, I want to be right. Was I frightened? Yeah, I was really frightened when he said I'm going to be the devil's advocate. My fear just amped up when I heard him say that. Was I inconsiderate? Oh, you bet, man. I was inconsiderate of this guy's experience. Maybe he was a real alcoholic. Maybe he wasn't. But he came to AA and he got sober by doing nothing. Most people, he went to meetings. He went to meetings, right? And so I was inconsiderate of his experience. And then I got on my knees and I said, God, can you please take this away? And then I called one of my sponsees and chatted with him for a little while, and I got him out of myself. And all of a sudden, because I was about 4 hours of extreme, just pissed offness, which is horrible. My heart hurt and everything. And then it was all gone like that, man. So once I really looked at this thing and I followed these instructions, it went away. So I did not owe anybody an apology because I didn't say anything, but I was going off the deep end just in my own head. So, step 10 on the wall, it's not what it is. It's we got to watch out for our own, resentment and our own fear. And when they crop up, we run these doggone columns and we do it, and then we try to help somebody, and then it goes away. I mean, it's freaking amazing. So again, it's always something when what part of myself is threatened, and I get it. And the funny thing is and then of course I went back to Eric and I said, well, the real reason is because my self-esteem took a hit. So I dressed everything up as righteous indignation, and I'm judgmental and I'm righteously indignant, and of course it didn't go away. But when I figured it out and I went through the proper steps that it told me to do, it went away. It's freaking amazing. And if I stay mad, it's my fault. And sometimes I like to be mad because you know what? We get a comfy feeling of superiority when we're judging and we're mad at other people, right? And sometimes I stay afraid because I want to rationalize not doing what I know I should do or keeping on doing something that I know I should not do. Eventually, thank goodness, I can catch myself and I say, hey, John, you're going off the deep end. Let's go through these and let's do what you're supposed to do. And again, man, the promise is at the bottom of the page. For we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, right? That means that we don't let people make us angry, right? That people should not be able to make us angry, man. So we do steps 3 through 10. We have removed enough self-will that we can become a little bit God-conscious, and we're now receiving what some people call intuitive thought, right? Or possibly even some directions from our higher power, right? And again, if our book says God's got all knowledge and power, and God is within me, that means that I have within myself all the knowledge and power to handle just about anything that comes up. And Bill talks about the sixth sense that we can tap into. I think he talks about it twice in the book, and he's talking about the soul, innate knowledge, our conscience, our little voice, whatever you want to call it. So that's it for step 10, I guess, and we will go back to the book, step 11.
So 85.
We are on page 85, you bet. Yep. Bottom of the page, last paragraph there. Highlight, step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. Just that little line, right? So here's a little exercise for you guys, and I do this. Think about the worst 2 things you've ever done in your life, right? Think about it, right? And do you think that you could have done those things if you were living in the sunlight of the Spirit? right? If you were living in the sunlight and trying to practice the principles of the sunlight of the Spirit, could you have done those things? The same God that created the boundary waters, the hippopotamus, the stars, I know I couldn't have done those things if I was trying to live the way I am today in the sunlight of the Spirit. There's no freaking way, right? So it's when we cut ourselves off that we do these doggone things. And that prayer and meditation is so important. We pray, but we've also got to listen. We shouldn't be shy on this matter of prayer. Better men than we are using it constantly. Underline the next sentence. It works if we have the proper attitude and work at it. That means we got to practice, man. We got to practice. And we definitely get better with practice. I mean, I know a lot of us when we start out, God, I don't know if you're there, but if you're there, it's pretty funny. It would be easy to be vague about this matter, yet we believe we can make some definite and valuable suggestions. Okay, so next to when, write PM. Okay, put a big PM right there. So these, and I got them all highlighted, but these pages we should read a lot. But I got a sheet that covers all these for you guys. So that's the PM, right? These are what we do at night. When we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Doggone it, write 4 next to that. There it is again. Do we owe an apology? Write 8 and 9 next to that. Have we kept something to ourselves which be discussed with another person at once? Put 5 next to that. Hello, sponsor. I'm doing my step 11 here. I had to call you about this. Were we kind and loving toward all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time? Again, I'm going to put 6 and 7 in there, right? Or were we thinking of what we could do for others, of what we could pack into the stream of life? Far different from how we used to show up. But we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection. Underline morbid reflection. And next to that, let's write, beat self up about past. And I used to do this, man, when I first got sober, I used to do it, and I would do something, I would, and it's usually always at work for me because I'm not married, right? So, all of these crazy things happen to me at work. I work in a kind of a high-stress place, and I would just completely go off on somebody, or I would do something very dishonest, and I would say, John, you're 3 years sober. You should be ashamed. How could you have done that? You are the worst person on earth, man. You are a loser. How could you do that? And we can't do that, right? So hopefully, if I've made a mistake, I fix it and I make amends quickly, and then I don't have to, because we cannot do it, because for that would diminish our usefulness to others, right? Plus, we don't feel very good when we're doing it too. And then highlight that last sentence. After making our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. Okay? And I'll just talk a little bit about that if we have time. And then next to on awakening, you can write big letters AM. AM. So they're giving us, again, step 10 is our walking around during the day kind of step. And step 11, we got AM, we got PM, and then we have certain prayers and meditations that we can use throughout the day too. On awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day before we begin. Highlight, we ask God to direct our thinking. Especially that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives, right? Just that right there. And that, I guess you can write 6-step prayer. So that's just kind of a 6-step prayer right there. Because those are our character defects and we want to be separated from them, doggone it. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance, for after all, God gave us brains to use. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. Okay, let's highlight. Go ahead and highlight to the end of the page there. Here we ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought, or a decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. We are often surprised how the right answers come after we have tried this for a while. So I guess you can write day next to that, right? Those are days. And you know, because a lot of times we're going to run into things and we don't know what to do. And if you're anything like me, I want it resolved now. I've got an issue and doggone it, I want it fixed right now. I don't want to wait. I want the answer. I want to go on. I want to put this thing behind me. I can't do anything else until this is taken care of. And the book says, no, man, we don't do that. We ask God for help. We relax, take it, we don't struggle, and then we go about our day, man. We go about our day. Maybe an hour later, something will pop into our head. It's like, hey, I'm going to call Joe over there because I bet he can help me with this. Or, maybe something's going to pop up. But we continue with our day. At the bottom of page 86, let's write, have sponsee call after PM prayers. If you're working with somebody and they're barely making it through each day, we're going to want them calling you maybe after morning prayers, but certainly after PM prayers, have them call you. So have sponsee call after PM prayers.